Everyone thought we wanted to destroy each other, until someone opened our lockers and found the letters we were never supposed to write. The first scream echoed through Jefferson High just after the 8 a.m. bell, sharp enough to silence the usual rush of sneakers, locker doors, and sleepy conversations. Students stopped in the hallway one by one, their curiosity spreading faster than any announcement over the intercom. A crowd formed near the senior lockers, phones already raised before anyone even understood what had happened. Ethan Brooks stood frozen at the end of the hallway, his backpack hanging from one shoulder as whispers rolled toward him like a wave. Someone had scattered dozens of handwritten letters across the polished floor. White envelopes, blue ink, folded pages covered in familiar handwriting. Every single one addressed to Noah Carter. Ethan's pulse stumbled. That wasn't possible. Those letters had been hidden where no one could ever find them. At the center of the crowd, Noah pushed through the students with the same cool confidence that had made him captain of the debate team and one of the most respected seniors in school. The moment his gray eyes met Ethan's across the hallway, the air seemed to tighten. For 3 years, everyone at Jefferson High had watched the two of them compete over everything. Grades, student council elections, debate championships, even charity fundraisers somehow turned into contests whenever Ethan and Noah were involved. Teachers joked that separating them into different classrooms might finally bring peace to the school. Students placed friendly bets before every academic competition. They were rivals, everyone agreed. The kind who exchanged icy stares instead of greetings. The kind who challenged each other every chance they got. So when Noah slowly bent down and picked up the top envelope, no one expected the color to quietly drain from his face. Ethan recognized the neat handwriting immediately. His own. His stomach twisted as Noah unfolded the letter with careful fingers. Around them, whispers grew louder. Someone laughed nervously. Another student read a sentence from a different page lying on the floor before gasping and covering their mouth. The hallway suddenly felt much smaller than it had a minute earlier. Ethan forced himself forward, every step heavier than the last. "Move," he said quietly, and for once people actually listened. The crowd shifted just enough for him to kneel beside the scattered pages. His hands shook as he gathered them, but another gust from the open front doors sent several letters sliding farther across the hallway. More students reached them before he could. More eyes scanned words that had never been meant for anyone else. Noah finally looked up. His expression remained calm, almost unreadable, but Ethan noticed the tiny movement of his jaw, the one thing Noah could never control whenever he was anxious. They had learned each other's smallest habits long ago. Unfortunately, so had no one else. "I guess the whole school's watching," Noah said quietly, just loud enough for Ethan to hear. Ethan swallowed hard. This wasn't supposed to happen. Before Noah could answer, Principal Henderson's voice cut through the hallway, demanding everyone put their phones away and head to class immediately. The crowd reluctantly dispersed, but the damage had already been done. Notifications buzzed across the building. Screens lit up inside classrooms before first period had even begun. By lunchtime, everyone would know the same impossible story. Jefferson High's two biggest rivals weren't enemies at all. And somehow, that truth was only the beginning. By the time the final bell rang that afternoon, Jefferson High no longer felt like the same school. Conversations stopped whenever Ethan Brooks walked past. Locker doors closed a little more slowly. Even teachers looked up from their lesson plans with questions they were too professional to ask. Ethan kept his eyes on the hallway floor, pretending not to notice the sideways glances or the buzzing phones that disappeared into backpacks the second he looked up. Every notification seemed to carry another rumor. Some students insisted the letters were fake. Others claimed Ethan had written them as part of an elaborate prank to embarrass Noah Carter before graduation. The wildest version insisted they had secretly been best friends for years. None of them came close to the truth. During fourth period, Ethan caught sight of Noah through the classroom window across the courtyard. Their eyes met for barely a second before Noah calmly returned his attention to the history lecture, as if nothing unusual had happened. That was exactly how they had always survived. Outside, they were rivals. Inside, they understood every glance without speaking a single word. The performance had become second nature. It had started so long ago that sometimes Ethan almost forgot where the act ended and real life began. After school, The parking lot slowly emptied beneath a sky painted with soft shades of orange and blue. Ethan ignored the familiar route toward the student lot and instead walked behind the football field, following the narrow path that disappeared behind the old gymnasium. Few students ever came there except the track team during spring practice. It was quiet enough that the sound of birds settling into nearby trees almost drowned out the distant traffic beyond the campus entrance. Noah was already waiting beside the aging brick wall, hands tucked inside the pockets of his navy hoodie. He did not speak immediately. He simply watched Ethan approach with the same calm expression he always wore whenever the rest of the world seemed ready to fall apart. Ethan stopped a few feet away and let out a long breath he had been holding since breakfast. "I am sorry," he whispered. "I checked that locker a week ago. Nobody should have found them." Noah offered a faint smile that barely reached his eyes. "You are apologizing for trusting the only place we thought was safe." Ethan looked down at the cracked pavement. "Everyone thinks we hate each other." Noah stepped closer, lowering his voice instinctively even though they were completely alone. "Maybe that is why nobody ever looked before today." A gentle breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass across the empty practice field. Without thinking, Noah reached out and brushed a tiny piece of paper from Ethan's jacket sleeve, a gesture so natural it lasted less than a second. Yet Ethan felt his heartbeat settle almost immediately. It was always the smallest moments that reminded him why every secret had been worth protecting. "They're going to keep asking questions," Ethan said quietly. Noah nodded. "Then we keep giving them the same answers." Ethan forced a tired laugh. "By arguing in class tomorrow? You usually win those arguments." "Not always." Noah's smile became genuine this time. "Only because I let you think you do." Ethan shook his head, unable to stop smiling back despite everything that had happened. For a brief moment, the rumors, the whispers, and the scattered letters felt impossibly far away. Then Noah's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen, and the warmth vanished from his expression. Someone had created a student forum dedicated entirely to the mystery of the letters. At the very top was a newly uploaded security camera screenshot showing two blurry figures meeting behind the gym just days before. Neither face was completely visible, but both of them knew exactly who the silhouettes were. The screenshot spread across Jefferson High faster than any rumor before it. By sunrise the next morning, students were no longer asking whether Ethan Brooks and Noah Carter knew each other outside of school. They were asking how long it had been happening. Every hallway conversation seemed to stop the moment either of them appeared, only to resume in hushed voices a few steps later. Ethan reached his locker to find a sticky note waiting on the metal door. Nice secret. No signature. Just two words that somehow felt louder than the crowd surrounding him. He peeled it away before anyone else noticed and slipped it into his pocket without changing his expression. Across the hallway, Noah was surrounded by members of the debate team discussing the upcoming regional competition. He answered every question with his usual calm confidence, never once glancing in Ethan's direction. Anyone watching would have believed nothing had changed between them. That illusion lasted exactly until second period. Their history teacher announced a partner presentation worth nearly 20% of the semester grade. The classroom buzzed with excitement as students immediately turned toward their closest friends. Then Mr. Bennett adjusted his glasses, glanced at the seating chart, and smiled. "To keep things interesting, I assigned the pairs myself." Ethan had a strange feeling before the names were even called. Ethan Brooks and Noah Carter. A chorus of quiet laughter rolled through the room. Someone whispered, "This is going to be a disaster." Ethan slowly stood, slinging his notebook under one arm before walking toward Noah's desk. Noah looked up with perfect composure. "Try not to slow me down," he said in a voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Ethan folded his arms. "That depends. Can you keep up this time?" More laughter. Mr. Bennett nodded with satisfaction, apparently believing academic rivalry would motivate both students. Neither teacher nor classmates noticed the tiny smile hidden in Noah's eyes before he looked back at the assignment sheet. The performance was flawless because they had rehearsed it for years without ever admitting they were acting. After class, they walked in opposite directions until the last curious eyes disappeared. 10 minutes later, Ethan slipped into the school library, climbing the narrow staircase that led to the rarely used second floor. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, filling the quiet space with warm afternoon light. Noah was already sitting in the corner between two shelves of history books, a stack of research articles spread neatly across the table. "You are early," Noah said softly. Ethan dropped into the chair across from him. "Everyone keeps watching us." Noah nodded. "That means we have to be even more careful." Ethan rested his elbows on the table and sighed. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" Noah was silent for a moment. Then he reached across the table just far enough for his fingertips to lightly touch the edge of Ethan's notebook instead of Ethan's hand. The distance between them remained small but unmistakable. "Every day," Noah admitted, "but I have never regretted choosing you." Ethan felt the tension in his shoulders loosen despite the uncertainty hanging over them. Outside the library windows, students crossed the courtyard, completely unaware that only a few yards away the school's most famous rivals were quietly sharing the safest conversation they had all week. Ethan opened the first research packet, trying to focus on the assignment, when a shadow moved across the frosted glass beside the stairwell. Footsteps stopped outside the library door. They were not alone anymore. Noah looked toward the entrance, his expression sharpening as the doorknob slowly began to turn. The library door opened just enough for the old hinges to sigh. Ethan instinctively leaned back in his chair, while Noah calmly slid a history textbook over the loose research notes scattered across the table. Both of them looked up at the same time. Mrs. Alvarez, the school librarian, stepped inside carrying a stack of returned novels balanced against her shoulder. She smiled politely when she noticed the two seniors. "I thought I heard someone up here," she said. "I am glad at least somebody still likes studying." Ethan forced a small laugh, while Noah thanked her with his usual quiet confidence. She organized a few books onto a nearby shelf, reminded them that the library would close in 30 minutes, then disappeared downstairs without another question. Neither boy spoke until her footsteps completely faded away. Ethan finally let out the breath he had been holding. "I thought it was someone from the student forum." Noah rested his hands on the table. "Sooner or later, somebody will try to follow us." Silence settled between them again, filled only by the soft hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of pages turning somewhere below. Ethan looked through the tall window overlooking the football field, where students were beginning soccer practice beneath the afternoon sun. "Maybe we should stop meeting here for a while." Noah nodded slowly. "Maybe." The answer sounded practical, but it carried none of its usual certainty. Ethan recognized that tone. Noah was worried. It was rare enough to make Ethan's chest tighten. "Do you remember the first time we talked?" Ethan asked quietly. Noah smiled before answering. "You mean the day it started raining?" Ethan laughed under his breath. "You remember. 2 years earlier, Jefferson High had looked almost exactly the same, except Ethan had been a nervous sophomore trying to find the science building before the sky suddenly opened. Rain poured across the campus in thick silver sheets, sending students running beneath covered walkways. Ethan had forgotten his umbrella and stood stranded outside the gym, watching the parking lot disappear behind the downpour. Most students hurried past without stopping. Noah Carter had been one of the last to leave the building. At that time, they barely knew each other beyond classroom introductions and occasional academic competitions. Noah paused only long enough to notice Ethan standing alone. Without saying a word, he walked back, lifted his umbrella, and held it halfway between them. "You are going to catch a cold if you stay here," Noah had said. Ethan blinked in surprise. "I thought you had somewhere to be." Noah shrugged. "It can wait." They crossed the campus together beneath an umbrella that was barely large enough for two people. Their shoulders brushed every few steps whenever the wind pushed the rain sideways. Neither of them spoke much, but the silence felt unexpectedly comfortable. Just before they reached the student parking lot, Ethan quietly thanked him. Noah had smiled and answered with 4 simple words Ethan never forgot. "You would have waited." Back in the library, Ethan looked across the table at the same quiet smile that had first appeared beneath that umbrella. So much had changed since then, yet somehow that small moment still felt untouched by the rumors surrounding them now. Noah gently closed the history book. That was the day everything became complicated. Ethan shook his head with a faint smile. No, that was the day everything finally made sense. Before Noah could reply, Ethan's phone vibrated across the wooden table. A new anonymous message appeared on the screen. It contained only one photograph. It showed the two of them beneath the same umbrella from 2 years ago. Someone had been watching them much longer than either of them had ever imagined. The anonymous photograph stayed on Ethan Brooks's phone long after the library lights switched off. Neither he nor Noah Carter spoke during the walk toward the front entrance. They left separately, just as they always did, careful to keep several yards between them whenever another student crossed their path. The routine that had protected them for 2 years suddenly felt fragile, as though every ordinary movement now carried the weight of a secret waiting to collapse. That evening, the student forum exploded with another wave of speculation. Someone uploaded a blurry copy of the same umbrella photograph only minutes after Ethan received it. Comments multiplied by the second. Some students dismissed it as coincidence. Others began comparing old yearbook pictures, club photos, and snapshots from football games, searching for every moment Ethan and Noah had accidentally appeared in the same frame. Tiny details that nobody had noticed before suddenly seemed suspicious. A glance across the cafeteria, standing in the same lunch line, leaving the auditorium within minutes of each other after a school assembly. None of those moments meant anything by themselves, yet together they created a story the entire school eagerly tried to finish. The next morning, Ethan arrived early hoping to avoid the attention, but the hallway was already buzzing. His closest friend, Mason Reed, caught up with him before first period. "Tell me the truth," Mason said quietly. "Is somebody trying to frame you?" Ethan forced a calm smile. "There is nothing to explain." Mason studied his face for a long moment before nodding, even though it was obvious he did not believe the answer. Across campus, Noah faced questions of his own. Members of the debate team insisted the rumors would distract judges during the regional championship. One teammate even suggested Noah make a public statement to end the speculation. Noah simply thanked them for their concern and returned to organizing debate notes with the same steady focus that had always impressed his classmates. His calmness only made people more curious. By lunchtime, the whispers had reached parents through neighborhood social media groups. Ethan's mother called to ask whether everything at school was all right. She sounded more worried than suspicious, and Ethan reassured her that students were exaggerating harmless gossip. After hanging up, he stared at his silent phone, wondering how much longer that answer would remain true. That afternoon, Ethan and Noah met only briefly in the crowded hallway outside the science labs. They did not stop walking. They did not even face each other directly. As dozens of students moved around them, Noah quietly slipped a folded note into the front pocket of Ethan's notebook during the briefest passing moment imaginable. No one noticed. Ethan waited until he reached an empty study room before opening it. Inside were only 8 handwritten words. "Do not panic. We will face this together always." Ethan read the sentence 3 times before carefully folding the paper again and placing it inside the same notebook where he had once hidden every unfinished letter. For the first time since the rumors began, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt certainty. Yet as the final bell echoed through Jefferson High, Principal Henderson's voice came over the intercom asking Ethan Brooks and Noah Carter to report to the main office immediately. Neither of them knew who had requested the meeting, but both understood that whatever waited behind that office door would change far more than hallway rumors. The walk to the main office felt longer than it ever had before. Ethan Brooks arrived from the science wing at the exact moment Noah Carter stepped out of the debate hallway. Neither of them acknowledged the other as they crossed the front lobby, even though every student nearby quietly watched to see what would happen next. The secretary greeted them with a polite smile before asking them to wait outside Principal Henderson's office. A few minutes later, the door opened. "Come in, gentlemen." The principal folded his hands on the desk after they sat down. His expression was calm, not angry, which somehow made Ethan even more nervous. "I am not interested in rumors," he began. "I am interested in making sure both of you feel safe and focused on finishing your senior year." Ethan glanced toward Noah, who remained composed as always. Principal Henderson continued. "Unfortunately, the situation has become a distraction across campus. Teachers have reported constant interruptions, and students are creating online discussions during class. That has to stop." Noah answered first. "We understand." The principal nodded. "Whether the stories are true or false is your personal business. However, I expect both of you to avoid adding fuel to the speculation." Ethan quietly agreed. The meeting ended without accusations or punishment, but the relief lasted only until they stepped outside. Waiting in the hallway was Coach Daniels, who had been searching for Ethan. "Can I borrow you for a minute?" he asked. Noah gave Ethan the smallest reassuring glance before walking away toward the front entrance. Coach Daniels led Ethan into the empty gymnasium where the afternoon sunlight stretched across the polished hardwood floor. "College scouts are coming to next week's showcase," the coach said. "You have worked too hard to let unnecessary attention affect your future." Ethan listened silently. The coach sighed before continuing. "People will always talk. My advice is simple. Stay away from anything that keeps the spotlight on you until the season is over." Ethan understood exactly what those words meant, even though Noah's name was never spoken. He nodded respectfully, but the conversation settled heavily in his mind. Later that evening, Noah faced a different conversation at home. His father sat across the dinner table holding a printed copy of the online discussion that another parent had shared. "Your guidance counselor called today," he said calmly. "She said students have been spreading rumors." Noah answered honestly, "Yes, they have." His father studied him for a long moment before asking, "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Noah looked down at the untouched dinner plate. 1,000 possible answers crossed his mind, yet none of them felt fair to Ethan or to himself. "Not tonight," he finally said. His father gave a slow nod. "Then I will wait until you are ready." The kindness in that response somehow hurt more than anger ever could. The next morning, Ethan found another folded note inside his locker. This time there was no handwriting he recognized. Inside was a single printed sentence. "Choose your future before someone else chooses it for you." Ethan immediately looked around the hallway, but every face appeared ordinary. Every conversation completely unrelated. During lunch, he managed to catch Noah's attention from across the cafeteria. Noah noticed the note in Ethan's hand and understood immediately that something had changed. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them spoke. They simply exchanged one quiet look across the crowded room, realizing for the first time that the pressure surrounding them was no longer coming from rumors alone. Someone wanted them to make a choice, and that choice was getting closer with every passing day. Friday arrived with a strange kind of silence that felt heavier than the rumors ever had. Jefferson High buzzed with anticipation for the regional academic showcase. Yet beneath every conversation lingered the same unanswered questions. Ethan Brooks stood alone outside the gymnasium before sunrise, watching volunteers unload banners while the cool morning air drifted across the empty parking lot. His phone vibrated once. A message from Noah Carter appeared without any greeting. "Meet me behind the auditorium before first period." Ethan stared at the screen for several seconds before slipping the phone back into his pocket. He already knew what they needed to discuss. They met beneath the old oak tree where almost nobody walked before classes began. Noah looked exhausted for the first time in years. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes, and the quiet confidence that usually surrounded him seemed weighed down by sleepless nights. Neither of them rushed to speak. The wind carried the distant sound of marching band practice, while fallen leaves rolled across the sidewalk between them. Ethan finally broke the silence. "Coach Daniels wants me to stay out of every rumor until the showcase is over." Noah nodded slowly. "My father asked me whether there was something I was hiding." Ethan looked away toward the empty baseball field. "What did you tell him?" Noah answered honestly, "That I was not ready." Another long silence settled between them. Ethan wished there were easy words waiting somewhere, but every sentence seemed to create another impossible choice. Noah stepped a little closer, careful to leave enough distance that anyone passing by would think they were simply talking before class. "You cannot lose your opportunity because of me," Noah said quietly. Ethan immediately shook his head. "This is not because of you. It has become because of us." Ethan felt the truth of those words settle heavily in his chest. Noah continued with the same gentle voice that had always calmed him. "You have dreamed about earning that scholarship since freshman year. You should not have to explain your personal life to college scouts or strangers on the internet." Ethan forced a tired smile. "You sound like you have already made a decision." Noah lowered his eyes. "Maybe I have." The first warning bell echoed across campus. Students began appearing along the sidewalks, laughing as they hurried toward the main building. Ethan instinctively took half a step back, restoring the familiar distance between them before anyone noticed. Noah watched the movement with quiet understanding. "Perhaps we should give everyone what they expect," he said. Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" Noah took a slow breath. "If they believe we cannot stand each other, then maybe they will stop looking for something else." Ethan's expression tightened. You want us to pretend even more than before? Noah held his gaze. Only until graduation. Only until your future is secure. Ethan knew Noah was trying to protect him, yet every word felt like another wall rising between them. Students were now filling the courtyard, and curious eyes had already started drifting toward the two familiar rivals standing unusually close together. Noah quietly stepped backward first. His face returned to the calm expression everyone recognized. "Meet me after the showcase," he said softly enough that only Ethan could hear. "No matter what happens today." Without waiting for an answer, Noah turned and walked toward the academic building. Ethan remained beneath the oak tree for another moment, watching him disappear into the crowd. Less than an hour later, as the showcase officially began inside the packed gymnasium, the master of ceremonies smiled at the audience before announcing the opening debate exhibition. The first two names called to the stage were Ethan Brooks and Noah Carter. The applause inside Jefferson High's gymnasium echoed beneath the high ceiling as Ethan Brooks and Noah Carter stepped onto opposite sides of the debate stage. Hundreds of students, teachers, parents, and visiting college representatives filled the seats. To everyone watching, this was exactly what they had expected for years. The school's greatest academic rivals facing each other one more time before graduation. Ethan adjusted the microphone and looked across the stage. Noah met his eyes for only a fraction of a second before turning toward the judges with his usual composed expression. The moderator introduced the topic and started the timer. For the next 20 minutes, they debated with remarkable precision, challenging each other's arguments, answering difficult questions, and earning nods of approval from the judges. Every exchange sounded sharp, intelligent, and competitive. The audience smiled as familiar sparks returned between the two seniors. Even the online rumors seemed to fade beneath the excitement of watching two exceptional students perform at their best. When the final statement ended, the gym erupted into applause. Ethan extended his hand across the stage. Noah accepted it without hesitation. The handshake lasted no longer than expected, yet in that brief moment, both of them silently understood that it might be the last time they could stand together without pretending. After the ceremony concluded, students crowded around the judges while parents congratulated participants. Ethan slipped away through the side hallway leading toward the empty auditorium. A folded piece of paper waited beneath the backstage door exactly where Noah had promised to leave it if they could not meet. Ethan unfolded it with careful hands. The rooftop after sunset. One last honest conversation. Hours later, the campus had grown almost completely quiet. The parking lot held only a handful of cars belonging to teachers finishing paperwork before the weekend. Ethan climbed the narrow maintenance stairs leading to the rooftop access door above the auditorium. Noah was already there, standing near the safety railing as the last colors of sunset stretched across the horizon. Neither of them spoke immediately. They simply watched the sky fade from orange into deep blue, listening to the distant sounds of evening traffic beyond the football field. Ethan finally stepped beside him. "You were incredible today." Noah smiled softly. "You won." Ethan shook his head. "That was never the point." Noah looked toward the lights beginning to glow across the town. "No, it never was." Ethan reached into his backpack and carefully removed one final envelope. Unlike the others, this one had never been placed inside the locker. It had remained with him through every rumor, every anonymous message, and every difficult conversation. He held it out toward Noah. "I never wanted strangers to read our story," he said quietly. "I wanted you to have this when everything became quiet again." Noah accepted the envelope with both hands, opening it slowly beneath the fading evening light. The letter contained no dramatic promises and no grand declarations. It simply described the ordinary moments Ethan treasured most. Walking beneath one umbrella, sharing silent afternoons in the library, competing on stage while secretly hoping Noah would always succeed. Ending with one simple sentence. "No matter where life takes us next, meeting you became the best part of my high school years." Noah lowered the letter, his eyes shining with quiet emotion. Before either of them could speak again, the rooftop door opened behind them. They turned together, expecting another anonymous threat or another student searching for answers. Instead, they found Principal Henderson standing quietly in the doorway. He looked at the letter in Noah's hands, then at the two seniors before offering a gentle smile. "You do not have to explain anything to me," he said. "But graduation is tomorrow, and I hope both of you choose to walk across that stage without carrying fear any longer." Graduation morning arrived beneath a clear blue sky that made Jefferson High look almost peaceful again. The banners hanging across the front entrance swayed gently in the warm breeze as families filled the football stadium with cameras, flowers, and proud smiles. Students lined up behind the stage wearing matching Navy graduation gowns, laughing about future plans that suddenly felt much closer than anyone had imagined. Ethan Brooks adjusted the gold honor cord around his neck and looked across the line until he found Noah Carter standing several places away. They did not wave. They did not smile. Old habits were difficult to leave behind. Yet for the first time in weeks, neither of them looked afraid. Principal Henderson stepped onto the stage and welcomed everyone before speaking about courage, kindness, and the importance of choosing honesty over fear. His words were simple, but Ethan felt every sentence settle quietly in his heart. One by one, seniors crossed the stage to receive their diplomas. Applause echoed through the stadium as each name was announced. When Noah's name was called, the crowd cheered warmly while he accepted his diploma with calm confidence. Moments later, Ethan heard his own name. As he walked across the stage, he noticed Coach Daniels standing near the faculty section. Instead of the worried expression from days before, the coach simply nodded with quiet pride. Ethan returned the gesture before continuing across the platform. After the ceremony ended, families surrounded graduates for photographs while friends exchanged hugs and promises to stay in touch. The campus buzzed with celebration instead of whispers. Rumors that had once seemed impossible to escape suddenly felt very small compared with the excitement of new beginnings. Ethan slipped away from the crowd and walked toward the old oak tree where he and Noah had shared so many difficult conversations. A few minutes later, Noah arrived carrying nothing except the final letter Ethan had given him the evening before. He smiled as he carefully folded it and placed it inside the inside pocket of his jacket. "It is staying with me," Noah said softly. Ethan laughed. "I hoped it would." They stood together beneath the branches while graduates wandered across the campus, taking final pictures. Nobody seemed interested in watching them anymore. Everyone was too busy beginning the next chapter of their own lives. Noah looked toward the open front gate beyond the parking lot. "My father talked with me this morning," he said. Ethan waited quietly. "He told me he only wanted one thing, that I build a life where I never feel ashamed of being honest." Ethan felt his shoulders relax in a way they had not for weeks. "My mother said something similar," he replied. "She told me that happiness is easier to carry than fear." They shared a quiet smile before walking together toward the front gate. This time, there was no reason to leave several yards between them. No reason to pretend they were strangers. As they reached the sidewalk beyond the school entrance, Noah gently reached for Ethan's hand. Ethan looked at him for a brief second before smiling and returning the gesture. They continued walking side by side beneath the bright afternoon sun, talking about college classes, new cities, weekend visits, and all the ordinary moments they had once believed would never be possible. Behind them, Jefferson High slowly disappeared from view, carrying with it every rumor, every misunderstanding, and every secret they no longer needed to hide. Ahead of them stretched a road neither of them had to walk alone, and for the first time since that rainy afternoon 2 years earlier, the future felt wonderfully open, wonderfully honest, and completely their own.